Good morning, good morning. All right, so the last of Prophecy Key to the Future, which is notes on Jackson County and the plat of the city of Zion. So here's the final information in the book, and then I'll just do a personal recap myself, and we'll call it good for this, and we'll go on to the next book. All right. Jackson County, Missouri is a choice land which will make a fit home for the people of Zion. Beautiful descriptions have been written of the area, two of which are quoted here. The first was written by the prophet Joseph on the day the land of Zion was consecrated for the gathering of the saints, August 2nd, 1831. The country is unlike the timbered states of the east. As far as the eye can reach, the beautiful rolling prairies lie spread out like a sea of meadows, and are decorated with the growth of flowers so gorgeous and grand as to exceed description. Nothing is more fruitful or richer stockholder in the blooming prairie than the honeybee. Only on the watercourses is timber to be found. There, in strips from 1 to 3 miles in width, and following faithfully the meanderings of the streams, it grows in luxuriant forests. The forests are a mixture of oak, hickory, black walnut, elm, ash, cherry, honey locust, mulberry, coffee bean, hackberry, box elder, and basswood, and with the addition of cottonwood, butterwood, pecan, and soft and hard maple upon the bottoms. The shrubbery is beautiful and consists in part of plums, grapes, crabapple, and persimmons. The soil is rich and fertile, from 3 to 10 feet deep, and generally composed of a rich black mold intermingled with clay and sand. It yields in abundance wheat, corn, sweet potatoes, cotton, and many other common agricultural products. Horses, cattle, and hogs, though of an inferior breed, are tolerably plentiful, and seem nearly to raise themselves by grazing in the vast prairie range in summer, and feeding upon the bottoms in the winter. The wild game is less plentiful, of course, where man has commenced the cultivation of the soil, than in the wild prairies. Buffalo, elk, deer, bear, wolves, beaver, and many smaller animals here roam at pleasure. Turkey, geese, swans, ducks, yea, a variety of the feathered tribe are among the rich abundance that grace the delightful regions of this goodly land, the heritage of the children of God. The season is mild and delightful nearly 3/4 of the year, in the land of Zion, situated at about equal distances from the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, as well as from the Allegheny and Rocky Mountains in the 39th degree of the north latitude, and between the 16th and 17th degrees of west longitude. It bids fair. When the curse is taken from the land to become one of the most blessed places on the globe, the winters are milder than the Atlantic states of the same parallel of latitude. The weather is more agreeable, so that the virtues of the inhabitants only equal to the blessings of the Lord, which he permits to crown the industry of those inhabitants. There would be a measure of the good things of life for the benefit of the saints, full, pressed down, and running over, even an hundredfold. The disadvantages here, as in all new countries, are self-evident. Lack of mills and schools, together with the natural privations and inconveniences which the hand of industry, the refinement of society, and the polish of science overcome. But all these impediments vanish when it is recollected what the prophets have said concerning Zion in the last days, how the glory of Lebanon is to come upon her, the fir tree and the pine tree and the box tree together, to beautify the place of his sanctuary, that he may make the place of his feet gorgeous. Where for brass he will bring gold, for iron he will bring silver, for wood brass, and for stones iron. And where the feast of fat things will be given to the just, yea, when the splendor of the Lord is brought to our consideration for the good of his people, the calculations of men and the vainglory of the world vanish, and we exclaim, out of Zion, perfection of beauty, God hath shined. History of the Church 197 through 98. In 1937, Elias S. Woodruff, president of the Central States Mission, wrote an article for the Improvement Era in which he described Jackson County in that day. Quote, and a big quote it is. The land of Zion today is beautiful, even more so, possibly, than when the first group of Latter-day Saints viewed it as they came with the prophet Joseph Smith to see this region, which had been designated by the people. The land of Zion today is beautiful, even more so, possibly, than when the first group of Latter-day Saints viewed it as they came with the prophet Joseph Smith to see this region, which had been designated by the Lord by revelation as the central gathering place of his people. Its rolling hills are covered with green pastures, some timber, and with productive farms, which are dotted by well-kept homes, housing a contented and happy people. Progressive little cities and towns have grown where once there was a wilderness, giving to Jackson County, in addition to its placid agricultural aspect, a decidedly urban appearance. Jackson is likewise a county made beautiful, not only by its natural endowments, but by a well-developed community planning project, the results of which have given this region a pleasing distinctiveness. Jackson County is keeping well abreast of the times, and is growing commercially, industrially, educationally, and religiously. Fine paved highways form a network over the entire area, passing by farms, through cities, and over bridges. Following the departure of the Saints, Jackson County returned to the hands of non-Mormons, and for years remained so. Only comparatively recently has the church re-entered this area, but it has been with great success. Friends have been raised up to the Latter-day Saints where once there were none to defend them, and today Mormons and non-Mormons live peacefully side by side. So remember, this is 1937 for this quote. The church has a beautiful chapel in this center place, this former central gathering place. It has a progressive printing establishment, and the headquarters of the Central States Mission are located there. The word of the Lord is going forth from Independence in the form of millions of tracts and pamphlets, as well as copies of the Book of Mormon. This literature is sent to the far corners of the earth, and from the office in Independence, the missionary activities in the 4 states are directed. The church owns much of the original temple lot of 63 acres, the mission headquarters being located but a short distance from this lot. The presidents of this mission have been accepted and honored on an honored basis among the businessmen of the city of Independence, have been accorded membership in civic organizations, such as the Chamber of Commerce and the Kiwanis Club, and have a wide circle of friends and acquaintances. A notable feature of Independence today is the high type of citizenry who reside there. They seem a group apart from the inhabitants of many surrounding sections, and seem to represent their lives in the best attributes of dependable, loyal citizens. Because of progressive and constructive tactics, the county has become one of the leading sections of this entire region. It has an area of 600 square miles, or 294,939 acres. 48% of the land area is cropland, while 45.5% is pasture. On this acreage, there are 3,494 farms, divided as follows: 615 dairy farms, 592 general farms, 550 livestock farms, 159 grain farms, 120 truck farms. On the total, 3,494 farms in the country. 2,410 are operated by their owners. In 1934, there were 15,108 acres in wheat, which yielded a total crop of 278,090 bushels. In the same year, 7,285 farmers raised 124,997 bushels of oats, and in the production of corn, 10-year average is shown to be 30 bushels per acre. In 1934, there was 48,620 acres in this crop. In the same year, there were 10,897 acres of alfalfa, 3,464 acres in Les Pedeza, 2,019 acres in potatoes raised for commercial distribution, and there were 212,657 fruit trees and 185,138 grapevines. 18,000 cows in the county produced 11 million gallons of milk. Figures for the 1930s show that the county produced 1,032,000 farm produce, 1,460,000 livestock dollars, and $2,993,000 meat and livestock productions. The assessed valuation of Jackson County is $461,396,210. This is 1937 numbers. It could be a lot more than that at this point. The assessed valuation of there are 1,300 miles of hard surfaced highways, not including 742 miles of paved streets in Kansas City. With the exception of Westchester County, New York, Jackson County has more paved roads than any other county in America. There is no single point in Jackson County that is not within 2 miles of a hard surfaced highway. Among other interesting information regarding Jackson County is the following: 12 trunkline railroads and 4 electric railroads run into Kansas City. In 1931, more than 125 million bushels of wheat were harvested, with 165 to 445 head of cattle and other animals made a total value of $139,500,000 in dollars. There are 6,274 retail stores with a total net annual sales of $375 million. Again, this quote came from the 1930s, 1937. Kansas City, compared with other American cities, has established itself as a commendable manner. It has one of the greatest livestock exchanges in the world, boasts a great winter wheat and hay market and flour milling production, and possesses a great horse and mule market, excels in meat packing and grain elevator capacity. The annual mean temperature of Jackson County is 55 degrees, and the annual mean precipitation is 37.31 inches. That means something to me. Of all the different statistics, just having average temperature and rain. No one traveling through the county and observing its many advantages can help feeling that it is indeed a land of promise. This is Joseph Smith's plat of the city Zion. This photo, showing the actual drawing made by the prophet, is used through the courtesy of Church Historian's Office. So in case you need to see that. To me, it's an interesting picture because it's basically doing columns of long, thin plats. So, that are oriented in one column, all one direction. Like you have the horizontal thin lines in one column, and then the next line you have vertical thin columns in the next line. And then it switches up later on. So, interesting. Oh, that really was it. Okay. So I guess it was just telling about how wonderful the place is and how wonderful it's going to be. What I find interesting is because I've looked at the different places in Jackson County through Google Maps, and it's a pleasant place. We went through there with my family on a kind of church history trip, and it was a very pleasant place. I couldn't tell while I was there, but from Google Maps you definitely can. There's something very interesting. The orientation of all the roads in Kansas, the state to the left of Missouri, is straight north and south, according to the pole of the earth. In Jackson County, it's off by 3 degrees. Like everything, you just go to the border, you can see, here's Kansas City, straight north, And here's Missouri, and it's off just by 3 degrees. And the reason why is they oriented north and south by magnetic north instead of polar north. So I thought that was funny and interesting. Other than that, I just remember how generally pleasant it was being there. It was very special being able to go to the different church histories and sites and seeing everything that was there. I did not get to go to Hans Mill only because the weather had become a little unpredictable, and apparently to get to where Hans Mill was, you have to go off-road, so not on paved roads. And using Google Maps, it apparently has mostly just become a meadow. And so, of all the different church history sites that I visited, that is one I was not able to go to. But I am interested in that. I have, and that's the next book I'm going to read, is actually about the Hans Mill Massacre. Because I'm trying to understand the different dark places in history that lead to tragedy. Now, the Mountain Meadow Massacre, I think, was actually covered very well in The Saints, and very fairly as well, and gave, because the reason I say that is people who are against the church try and twist that story in all sorts of ways. I mean, heck, you have American Primeval, which is a show that I don't care to watch, that apparently took it and made it seem like, oh, Brigham Young was this evil mastermind who was setting up his empire in the West, and so he had to destroy anyone in his way. No. What it was is the Saints had already lived through being kicked out of places like Kirtland and especially Missouri, and moving to Nauvoo and then being kicked out of Nauvoo. They in fact, many of them left under cannon fire, or threat of cannon fire at least, as they were leaving Nauvoo in the middle of winter. Pleasant. So it was just a, get out, and it was kind of warning stuff. But there was plenty of times where they were under the threat of absolute annihilation. So they have endured that several times. They come to the West. Here in the West, they are told by Brigham Young to start spreading out and developing cities north and south. So some go up to Idaho and even far as north as Canada, and others start going south. And down in the Cedar City, St. George area, you have starting new towns and villages. Well, because of we have a very mixed history with the government of the United States, because we were literally fleeing the United States for the persecution that the Saints were receiving. And so here they are out west, and we're trying to become a state. We're considered a territory. We're only given half autonomy of our government. So that's how Brigham Young becomes like territorial governor. But there's several federal appointments that are specifically made without regard to the population, that do everything they can to stick their thumb in the eye of the population here. And because of that, they start sending ill reports of the church, and so they send a contingency of the army out west. Now, some people have theorized that because it was just before the start of the Civil War, that it was to try and lead away some of the Northern Army so it wouldn't be in play during the Civil War. But, I don't know. I'm not that much of a historian on that, but it seems plausible. On the other hand, it's called the Mormon War, and you get Fort Douglas, which is up near the University of Utah, where they literally still have a cannon aimed at Brigham Young's house, even though it's long far away. It's still a symbolic kind of thing. And, you know, they basically come here threatening that, well, they think because of the ill reports of those federal appointees who are here, that the Saints are trying to secede from the nation, even though we're just a territory, and during a time, you know, and in open rebellion against the government. And so, hence they sent that army over here, and we had to bury the foundations of the Salt Lake City Temple, and we were on our toes. This was not, we were willing to, like, burn our homes and burn our fields and leave once again if we needed to. I mean, that's kind of pretty hair-trigger stuff, right? But they eventually settle in and realize, no, we're not in open rebellion. We're just trying to live and survive. Although, again, it becomes this dance of people who, there are appointees who are sympathetic to the Saints versus appointees who just hate the Saints. And so it depends on your view and how you approach things and the reports that happen. So the Saints continue to do what they do, is build up. But here in the middle of all this tension, you've got a group of settlers going to California that are talking about driving the Mormons out. And some of them even being rumored to have said that, some of us were those who were present at the martyrdom of Joseph Smith, that we killed him like a dog, kind of stuff. Or at least that's the rumors. And the people down in that area, that was spreading quick, and the local leaders were trying to figure out, what do we do here? Are we going to be run out again? It's kind of like a mix of worry about being run out, a bit about, justice for Joseph Smith, or revenge, depending on how you want to look at it. And there's all this rumor mill and panic going on. They send a messenger up to Brigham Young as fast as they can, which is a 3-day journey. And as soon as Brigham Young hears it, he says, send this back immediately. Don't do anything. Don't touch him. Just leave him be. We don't want any trouble with this. But by the time the messenger was heading back, it was already too late. The local people had already committed the massacre. And so it shows panic and worry and rumor causing the worst of history. And after everything that they endured, it's like, okay, which angle do you want to take it from? Do you want to take it from panic from being run out again? Do you want to take an angle from seeking justice for things that have happened before? And it's messy. It's not fun. But yeah, people of against the church are going to twist it in so many different ways of, oh, it was on purpose, and oh, it was this, and oh, it was that. And it's like, no, it was just wrong. It was just wrong. That's all. And it was extremely sad and horrific and regrettable that it occurred. And when I look at Hans Mill, I'm like, okay, here's kind of a counterbalance to this. It was a massacre that occurred to our members of the church, and I commonly look at what happens in Missouri, and I am still to this day horrified by how could this happen, is what I keep asking myself. How in the world could regular people be turned against their neighbors, and why? I mean, I have the general basic academic understanding of, look, here you have a state that considers itself a slave state. being a center place for a giant movement of people, many of whom have quite northern sympathies and anti-slavery ideals, coming to settling in your county. I mean, just imagine if, and there are things like this happening nowadays where you have a religious movement coming to move into some small town and literally taking over not only the entire population, but the government and how it's run and everything like that. And so you feel like, hey, I've got myself established here. Here's all these people coming in, and they're just taking over, and they have these really weird ideas that I don't like, and they're just upending everything that I've worked for, and they're very presumptuous and all this other stuff, and that leads to the tensions and mobbing of the saints in Missouri. To me, I want to have more of a deeper understanding of that. Because it takes two to tango. And, if it literally is extremely one-sided, that's horrific. If it's not so one-sided, then at least it's like, okay, I at least understand where they're coming from. No, they should not have done that at all. And I kind of suspect that's the case because there's certain mentalities that occur when you have a large group of zealous people trying to live the way of the Lord, coming to the place and just relocating and taking over, basically, that you could get really fussy really quick if you're in the middle of that. So I'm interested in that, and so the next book I have is about the Huntsville Massacre, and I'm looking forward to reading about it, to understanding more in depth, hopefully getting a greater understanding, because I want to understand why do these things happen. And that way, if I can, the reason I want to is because I want to relate it nowadays. If we have all these different prophecies about things getting worse before the millennium, I want to understand, if there's actual persecutions against the saints, where is it going to come from? Why is it going to happen? How is it going to occur? Because you see little flare-ups that are happening online, and there are deep sentiments of people out there that you're like, where do you get this? Where is this coming from? And to me, so far nowadays, hi dearie, oh, come here. Nowadays, for example, it just seems to be kind of like blind religious bigotry. No going on the table. She just got her fixed, so gotta keep her safe. Come relax. So, to me, the idea is people are just doing it out of just ideologically driven ignorance. And so, like many other ideologically driven ignorance stuff, whether that's politically or religiously, people say and do stupid things online. And that, of course, can boil over to actual physical violence, as we've seen in Michigan. And so I'm like, but the funny thing is it's a wake-up call to anyone who thinks that it's one-sided politically. It's not. It's both sides politically, because this is a different arena. It's religious ideology. So it's, in some ways, if you kind of compare religious ideology to persecution from political ideologies, members of the church can get it from both sides easily. The political left in America, that are all progressive and woke, etc., would come after the church for our traditional values, for believing in marriage, for believing in family, for believing in protecting children and families from degradation of moral values, let's put it that way. Then on the right, we would absolutely get it from those who are generic Christian fundamentalists, ones who are just like, well, anyone who's not my religion or doesn't believe in Jesus Christ the way I think they should believe in Jesus Christ are evil and they're demons. And so it comes from that kind of thing, or just from regular anti-Mormon sentiment from people that are out there. So the church can take it from either side politically. So it doesn't matter who's in charge. Just watch. It'll change. And so if you make friends with one side or the other, just remember that, there are contingencies in those groups that are
Anything but a water bottle.
cute. So there are contingencies on either side that are very extreme, that are unsavory. Doesn't matter which side it is. So anyways, I'm looking forward to that book. I think overall, Prophecy, Key to the Future, I think is a fantastic book for many reasons. I think it did its best to give a chronology and specification of how things are supposed to fall out according to the author. I think that's wonderful and amazing and very, very enlightening. I also caution that prophecy is never 100%. Despite what fundamentalist people online would like to say, because we even have plenty of prophets in the Old Testament who it was not 100%. So whether that's Jonah or Elisha, as I said, as examples earlier. So when I say prophecy isn't 100%, it means that it can be a contingent thing. It can be a thing where it's fulfilled, but in ways that we don't recognize or understand. So, for example, when Matthew goes back and lists all the way that Jesus fulfills these prophecies, is taking this information that at the time was meant for the people at the time in a certain way, and then he comes back and reframes it to show how Jesus fulfilled these prophecies as well. It's a reframing of old prophecies. And if it's done by prophetic voice and instruction, divine instruction, that's a legitimate way to do things. And so just keep in mind that this is how prophecy works. When we're given this beforehand, there's a lot that I'm sure that will be fulfilled, but there's some that just because we're people and human, we're going to get certain details wrong, and that's okay. I think she wants attention. But most of all, I hope that most of all, it gives you things to look at and look for and know that, hey, the prophecy, the gift of prophecy still exists, that it's still something in the church that is extremely important. Ow, you little guy. And that more importantly, you can receive it for yourself in your own life to guide you. And as you look for these signs of times and the second coming, you can kind of get the idea and feel, and you can listen better to what God has for you. And that way you're much more fit for what the Lord wants. So, may God be with you. We'll see you.